Welcome to the Dana Grant Show, where heart-centered stories, authentic connections, real talk, and real action come together. I'm your host, Dana Grant, and I believe in the boundless potential within each of us. Join me as we dive into transformative conversations that not only inspire growth, but compassion with a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us. Let's embark on this journey together, unlocking all the power within and creating a life of purpose and fulfillment. This is the Dana Grant Show, where your story matters and your voice is heard, and I cannot wait to dive in. Hi, Brian Galke. It is so nice to have you here. Subtle Skills. I have been waiting for this interview because I was fascinated from the first moment that we were introduced at the Unstoppable event.
Yes.
I
Uh,
didn't yet. Yeah. Tell me about you. Tell me
uh,
about you.
what I was just going to say about that event is that was such an amazing event to get to be a part of. I felt like I broke into the girls' locker room, but it wasn't what I expected because I know Amberly. I actually met her when she was a speaker and I was in the audience before I started speaking. And we ran back into each other at another event. And I told her, hey, look, I'm speaking on Friday, so I can't come to that, but I'll come after my event ends Saturday. And it was so refreshing to be in a room full of women who don't tear each other down. Instead, they lift each other up. And I told her, like, everybody was dressed in these vibrant colors and everyone was cheering everybody on and no sneers and dirty looks. And
No.
it was really an amazing room to be in. And then I got to hear you speak on stage and you got up there and you got vulnerable and you told people kind of your history and what you've gone through and things you never told other people. And it was just,
Yeah.
that's the type of things that take place in that room. And so like I felt like the movie Bosom Buddies, where I snuck
Oh,
in,
yeah. Yeah.
but
I
it
love
was
that.
such a great room to be in.
Well, you encapsulated that pretty perfectly because that was the first time I talked on stage. And when she asked me to do that, I mean, I've been
Yeah.
on stage a lot, but talked
Yeah.
about deeply personal things and that authenticity from there. And she has asked me to start this show, and it's been 8 years in the making. And now we're rolling. And it's like I am hand picking and vetting people that I really deeply want to hear from. I
Hmm.
love your story. I liked meeting you there, even though I didn't know at the time that you decode faces.
Right.
And today we're going to do a little bit of that. We're going to hear about what you've done with this, where you started, where you're at, where you're going.
Hmm.
Um, and you're going to break down my face.
Yes.
I think that's the cool. I don't know. Yeah, we're not going to cut. We're not going to erase it if it's not good. We're going to just stay with it. Whatever you say, I'm 1000% in, just like you signed and said I'm 1000% in. I'm a
Yeah.
1000% in.
The good news is there's really no bad facial features. Like now there's
Mm.
combinations I'd pay attention to, but
Ah,
it's about learning to understand other people. So there isn't judgment. It's not judgment. It's learning to understand people and just in a different way. And that's the really good part about it. And that's what people often get wrong is they'll watch the videos and go, "Oh, you're gaslighting that person." I'm like, "Because I'm not attacking them. I'm just telling
yeah.
you what I can see based on their face, not, you know." So we live
Yeah.
in a very interesting society where people think if you're not attacking someone, then you're gaslighting. And it's like, no, that's not the way
Mm.
it works. It's just I'm saying what I see, and there's just very few negative features. I mean, when we get to me, I'll show you a negative feature on my face, but there's
Mm.
very few of them. There's things to pay attention to, but there is no disqualifying feature that I'd go, oh my gosh, and just walk away from the person for.
Wow, I love that. I love that. And I love the fact that you said there is no disqualifying feature. There's no bad features.
Right.
And, it's just like when you went into that room, you read the energy and it was all supportive features. I think any
Mhm.
information that I want from somebody is I wanted to support them in helping them better understand their face, better
Yes.
understand other people's faces,
Hmm.
especially the energy of another human that's in front of you. I mean, what a gift that you're giving that we can help us read people a little better.
So we live in an interesting time, and that is there was a study done in 2023 by intelligent.com. And if you go and look up the study, they talked to 800 employers about kids graduating college and applying for
Mm.
jobs. And it was crazy. It was like 29% couldn't make eye contact, 21% refused to turn their camera on for a video interview, 19% brought their parents with them to an interview. And the reason I bring that up is not to make fun of kids, but they've grown
Yeah.
up in this society where this connects them to the world, but it disconnects
Mhm.
them from each other. And that's really what we're trying to figure out is how do we start building connection again? Because with AI and automation coming very, very fast, It's
Yeah.
soft skills that will keep you employed and relevant versus what you can be replaced by. So we need to go back to learning to understand others, connect with people like we are here. Look, we're on a digital format having this meeting. There's nothing wrong with technology, but it's how
Right.
you use the technology and incorporate it. But if you rely on
Right.
it, you're replaceable.
I love that you said that. And this is so relevant to me actually in this moment because I have people interviewing right now and they're
Mhm.
terrified because, again, they're a generation. I'm much older where I remember having to sit in front of boards and panels. And I remember flying back east and having to deal with people in sales one on one. There was no cell phones, there was no laptops. It's 1991. I had the
Yes.
big box phone. When I got that, it was like, oh, I got a cell phone. I mean,
Yes.
and it was all about, I was in sales. I was
Hmm.
for a pro business lobbyist group, and I went door to door in sales. I read people. I How they read me instantly told whether they were going to support a pro business lobbyist group or not. It was
Yes.
all on how they read me, and I could tell pretty instantly whether they were going to give me their time or not.
Yes.
Um, and it is a skill set. You were right.
Well, we have to look at it and try and understand from their perspective. So if you ever read any books like I love Never Split the Difference Here by Chris Voss, I'm
Yeah,
reading another one called Convince Me by former hostage negotiators for the FBI and things of that nature. And the first
I'm
step of
reading that too. I
any,
can't believe you're reading
oh,
that. I'm reading
oh
that too.
yes.
That's yeah,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Well, we were on a podcast with them recently and they were a really good group to meet. So,
Oh, nice.
but so think about it from this. We see kids on their phone, right? And I have a 7-year-old and she can like whiz through her tablet like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah.
But what we created is like you and I, when we took pictures, it had to go be developed and it was either a good picture or it was a bad picture and we lived with it. Kids now take a picture
Mm.
and if they don't like it, they delete it. They're looking for perfection, text messages, emails. I want to craft the perfect message. We grew up where the phone rang and you just picked it up. No caller ID. You didn't know who it was.
Yeah.
If you wanted something, you had to go to the store. You had to talk to people. Conversation is how we achieved things growing up. That's not what they grew up with.
Right.
They can order dates, food, you name it, all on a phone. And then when they
Yeah.
get to real life conversations, it's the equivalent of you and I for public speaking. So the
Yeah.
number one fear right now in younger kids is face-to-face communication because it's not rehearsed. They can't control the situation. And that's what
Oh,
public speaking was for us, right? It was the
yeah.
fear of being judged by getting in front of others. That's face-to-face communication for younger people this day and age.
Well, I love that you really narrowed that down, and it was true. I think I don't know what the statistics are, but it used to be number one fear was public speaking.
Yes.
Now it's probably face-to-face meetings on just meeting a person and having yourself not look like they think you look. I just had this conversation. I just got back from Scottsdale and I just had this
Mhm.
conversation. They said it's so refreshing that you look like you look out there, and I'm like, well, thank you. I
Right.
Yeah, and I didn't really know what they meant at first, but then I understood as the conference went on
Hmm.
that the perfection paralysis, that people keep doing it over and over again for that perfection, and we
Yes.
never allow that vulnerability, and I think that's what we connected with on when I was on stage was the vulnerability of me sharing the deepest parts and the struggle and the imperfections and the scars and, all of it. So
Hmm.
people and look at how many people lined up and said, I need that, and I need that, and my mom needs that, and my aunt needs that. It was shocking to me how many people that looked perfect and taking perfect selfies all day long at
Right.
the end of that conference needed that, needed
Yes.
needed that in their life. And I mean, the amount of crying that and the connection, it just moved me enough to start this podcast. I said, no more,
See?
for me, it was no more hiding. You have
Yes.
to come out. You have to, there's no more excuses on why you don't want to do. You're never too busy. You've got to do
Right.
it. You've got to pull back the curtain, not only on your own life, but other people's lives, because I believe the stories that we create, this perfection paralysis again, where we created this and people can't find us. We can't find
Right.
people anymore because everything is curated. So,
Hmm.
like you said, it's everything looks great. And then you get it and you're like, oh, that's not so great. So there's this high, low, but this level, this playing field that I love to play on
Hmm.
is this authentic connection of you never know what's coming yet next. And with the podcasting, you never know what I'm going to ask next. I don't know what you're going to say next. We
Right.
didn't script anything. And I love
Yeah.
keeping it that way.
Yes. There's some podcasts I've been on where they send you the 10 questions they're going to ask, and I don't read them because I don't want it to be rehearsed.
Yeah.
I'm just like, if I wing it, if I read it, I'll overthink it. if we just go into the conversations having a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. But I would like to read this because what really stood out to me when I printed this out was that your career path has been really unique, where you
Mhm.
started and where you are now. And can you
Yes,
share that transition of, you said introverted help desk role to managing a $40 million portfolio as a regional vice president of sales. I mean, what are your biggest challenges along the way? What did it take to be you and to
Mhm.
create what you do now and to reach where you're at, which I call you
Sure.
a master genius of your trade. You are. I don't
Thank
know
you.
anyone else that does it as well as you.
My mentor that taught me, I will always give him more credit than me. But yes, so where I started is as a kid, I was really gregarious and want to meet people, but somewhere in life, I was told, hey, you got to calm down, sit down. And I went from being
Mhm.
very extroverted, talking to the construction workers next door while they're building the house next to us, to kind of the quiet person. But I'm an
Mm.
introverted extrovert that I love to be around people. But I was terrified to be around people at the same time because what introverts do is we live in here in the kind of in the prison of our own mind. So I always picked jobs that people had to come to me, server, bartender, bouncer, retail sales, you name it. And so when I finally got into corporate America, I first graduated with a communications degree, and that's where my kind of fascination with people started because I was a communications major and a psychology minor. Because
Mm.
what do good introverts do? We pick up books to learn things. And so with those two as my degrees, then I was starting to study people in different ways. And I picked up tons. Like I have an entire bookshelf over here that's all body language books. And one of the books I keep right here is Janine Driver's You Say More Than You Think, because that's what does my body language say about me. But
Yeah.
I would pick up books like that because I felt like I missed that day in school where they taught you how to network with people. Like I could meet people, but I always
Mm.
felt awkward doing it.
Mhm.
And I was living up here in the prison of my own mind, not in the present moment. And in 2010, something changed my life. And that was a friend came in from out of town. She said, let's go to dinner. I show up at the restaurant and she calls and says, I'm not going to make it. I'm like, here we go. And she goes, no, no, look, you need to come meet this guy at the trade show. I'm like, nope, I'm at the restaurant. I'm staying here. I was being stubborn.
Mhm.
She finally convinced me to go. And I'm like, why do I need to go meet this guy? She goes, because he reads faces. And I go, yeah, that's a bunch of crap. I've never heard of it. Look, I've got all these books over here. I've never heard of this. This guy's a sham, right? He's a fraud.
Mm. Yeah.
And she's like, you got to come meet him. So I
Yeah.
went, but I went to go prove that this guy was a fake. So I went up there just ready, guns loaded. All right, I'm going to wait for him to say generic
Mm.
things that apply to everyone. Like you've had a hard time in life. Who hasn't? Or, someone whose name starts with M, you name it.
Yeah.
And so I was waiting for what they call Barnum statements, and that is statements that are so generic that they can apply to everyone.
Mhm.
So he sat us all down at dinner, and I still just sat there, arms crossed, waiting for this guy to talk.
Body language, arms
Yes, but
crossed. I'm
oh,
ready. I'm
absolutely.
ready for you.
Hey, this guy ruined my night. I'm going to ruin his. And we sat down, and without anybody saying a word, he just started going person by person, top to bottom, left to right. We'll explain that in a minute. And he was saying, based on your face, I see this, 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 and this. And I was waiting for him to screw up or repeat the same thing, but on different faces with different features. And he didn't do it. And then he got to me and he completely read my face. And I was like, this guy's been digging through my trash. Like, it threw me. But I'm a skeptic, but I'm a curious skeptic. So I
Mm.
bought his book and I would drive from Dallas, Fort Worth, or Dallas, Texas, where I lived, to Fort Worth, which was 45 minutes twice a month
Mhm.
to learn in a group setting. But I was still skeptical. So I would take the book. As a matter of fact, I still show people the book here. This was my original book from 2010. It's called
Oh, I love that.
you can see my name tags on it.
Yeah, I love that.
What you can see is by sitting with him, then I got to learn and highlight and see what all the different features mean. And so it's an entire book full of everything. But I still thought, how do I know this is true? This can be a guy just selling me anything. So I would take
Yeah.
the book or the flashcards, which I'm a huge fan of the flashcards because they're more succinct as to what you have.
All
And
right.
when I was traveling for work, because I was on the help desk, but then we needed an installer. So I started installing things.
Mm.
They go, oh, well, guess what? Since you're the installer, you also have to be the public trainer. I'm like, oh, okay. So then I had to learn the material and get up and do speaking in front of people. And so I could watch for body language, but body language is reactive. And so when I
Mm.
learned this was how to proactively understand people. But I would still go to the restaurants and the bars before, and I'd leave the book out, and people's curiosity would kick in, like, what's that book about? And I go, well, I took this class and I kind of think this guy's full of it. But can I ask you what I think I learned? I'll show you in the book. And they're
Mhm.
like, yeah. And when I would do this, it wasn't 100%, but it was in the high 90s. And so I'd
Mm.
start with my server or the bartender, and then they'd bring over somebody else because people go, how do I know you're not cold reading me? I'm like, fair point.
Mm.
Grab somebody else that I don't know. Or show me a picture of someone on your phone. Now, the showing you a picture of somebody on their phone was the real litmus test because
Mm.
there's nobody to nod or agree or disagree. It's either you're right or you're 100% wrong.
Yeah.
And I started realizing there's something to this. So in 2012, I went to the intensive 3 day study, and it really just changed my life. And I started going out, but I wasn't telling anybody what I learned. That's why the
Mm.
company to this day is called Subtle Skills,
Mhm.
because you don't want to tell people what you're doing. Because the minute you say, hey, I read a body language book, or hey, I learned how to read faces, everybody's like, cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
So,
I just had that experience in Arizona. Someone said I was a famous psychic when I checked in. I'm like, I'm not a famous psychic. In fact, I don't like that word, but I'm a
right.
connector and I'm an energy reader. I look at it as
Yes.
an energy. I can't help it. Born that way, just honed the skills. And they said, if you're so good, your assistant I forgot my flask, my
Oh,
hydro flask. It's
yeah.
110 degrees. I need it. And they
Oh,
said,
yes.
what color did she buy you to replace it? And I'm
Hmm.
like, because I don't know what color. And they've got it stapled in the bag. And
Hmm.
I said, are we going to play that game? And they said, oh yeah, they're all there wanting to know. I said,
Yeah.
navy blue, pulls it out, navy blue. Then
Hmm.
it's got the wrong top on it. It doesn't have the like pop-up straw that I need.
Oh,
And so they give that one to me for free. I'm happy to send it back. Give me another
yeah.
one. They staple it shut again. They said, what color is this one? Because there's no way I can know because they're contacting her
Right.
and we just had to go with whatever they had. I didn't know. And I'm still in the lobby and I said, we're doing it again. They said,
Yeah.
yeah. And I'm like, you're not convinced. And they're like, well, you could have guessed really well. And I'm like, baby blue. And I said, if it
Yeah.
was up to her, it'd be pink or purple because, she's my unicorn. But
Right.
I'm going to say baby blue is what she would have gone with. And, it's energy. So would you find, and I was right, but would you find that what you do is based on some form of energy of the face? Is there any part of the energy involved in this, or is it all skill set on the read?
It's mainly skill set. Now, I will tell you, when you're paying attention to people, their
Hmm.
energy changes because so many people are used to putting up a wall.
Yeah.
And the minute you say anything that lets them know that you make them feel seen and heard and you're legitimately trying to connect, not commission breath, but legitimately try and connect with them, then that
Mm,
wall falls down. And
I
I'll
love
give you a
that.
very, very simple one that I love to do that has nothing to do with faces. I'm just curious by nature. So if I see somebody with a watch on their left hand, I say, hey, are you left-handed? And they'll either
Hmm.
say yes, and I know they're creative, or they'll say no. My dad, my mom, my sister, my brother used to wear the watch in his hand, and that's the way I grew up learning. So it goes into a story. They can just say no, but when you take an interest in people and you focus on other people, that's where the real connection is created, and that's where people's walls come down and the connection process starts. And
Oh,
so when you do that, and now it's a very simple one with the watch, but when I'm looking at facial features, I'm giving my time and attention in a day and age that we're so distracted by everything that people are like, are you even paying attention to me? Because people will be like, uh-huh, yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. Yep. Oh,
yeah,
sorry, I got something on my smartwatch.
yeah.
But when you like the reason that I teach in keynotes, I teach eyebrows first is because eyebrows lead to eye contact. And that is such
Oh,
a rare skill this day and age. People get nervous looking someone in the eye. Like,
mm,
just go to any coffee shop tomorrow and watch as soon as somebody orders, what do? They don't even say hi to anybody. They just walk
yeah,
back over to the next event.
yeah.
And that's the where we live this day and age. So I teach eyebrows and eye angles first because I want eye contact to come back in. And what happens
Mm,
is when you learn to focus on someone else, there's basically four basic human needs. You're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs,
yeah.
but the four main ones are physical safety, emotional safety, people want to feel seen and heard, and people want to feel connected. Well, when you're looking and talking to someone and you're looking at them trying to figure out, I know what I want to say, but how do I speak their language? That's where they feel seen and heard. And then when you keep that going, that's what creates connection. And that's
Mm,
really how you build relationships, and relationships is what builds business.
mm. So it builds connection. So when we say sales and business,
Hmm.
I immediately digest that as connection,
Yes.
energy, connection, trust. why we lean into people, why I leaned into you in my top three that I wanted immediately on my launch. I'm like, gotta have him.
Yeah.
He's a connector. He's a reader of, and he pays attention,
Mhm.
and he leans in hard. I mean, I've
Yeah.
watched almost all of yours because I'm number one, I'm fascinated. I don't even have usually time, but
Yeah.
I set it aside and save it because I want to know.
Yeah.
It's informative, and I love the rhythm of how you speak and
Thank you.
connect. Yeah, and how you
Well,
connect. Yeah, it matters to me.
I'm laughing because you talked about being authentic earlier. The last few videos I've been posting on Instagram, TikTok, I post the same video across all platforms.
Yeah.
And the way I was mic'd up in Scottsdale, of all places, is it was right by my nose and my mouth. So everything sounds like this the whole time. And I just listened to it. And I'm like, oh God, this is so bad. I sound like I'm, but I'm still posting it because I want it. The content is still good, even though the presentation is not the best. Because I sound like I ran there, and I'm not a runner. But yet it's funny because I could have just said, no, I'm not going to put that out to the
Yeah.
world. But to your point,
Yeah.
when we live in a day and age where people are trying to manufacture this perfect version of stuff. So when I say things
Right.
like, what was life like a year after getting fired? That was one of my most popular posts because
Yeah.
people are afraid to say, I'm divorced, I've been fired, I've been dumped. But what you have to let people know is they're not alone.
Yeah.
And putting up all this fake crap, like people see you up on a stage and they think life is perfect. No, life is hard for everyone. And what
Mhm.
people honestly mistake for when they see you on stage, they think you're extroverts. I'm now 2.5 years into this full time, or a year and a half,
Mhm.
2 years. And what I've realized is there's more introverts who put themselves out there on stage to help others than there
Yeah.
are extroverts who are there for the attention.
Am I an introvert or an extrovert?
I think you're a combination. Like me, you're an
Yeah.
ambivert, but I
Yeah, I
think
am.
when
Yeah.
when you get up there, you can turn it on. But
Yeah.
then I also saw you after you got off stage, you kind of were like, oh crap, there's a lot of people, but I need my time over here also.
Yeah, I'm gonna give until the end, but
Yes.
yeah, I preserve my time. Most of my time is spent alone. That's very
Mhm.
true. I travel alone. I spend it alone. I'm very dialed into one assistant that supports me and knows me very well,
Yeah.
that protects that space and energy. I stay out of big crowds just because I feel all the energy, and
Mhm.
I float into two worlds. I hear things, I see things. I always want to lean in and help, but I'm like, not your job, not your job, and they
Yeah.
have not asked. And no spiritual bypassing here.
Yeah. Uh,
God is in control. Step out of the way.
Isn't
Yeah.
it kind of funny though that we live in a day and age that if you overhear something you can help and you do, it's seen as rude for
Yeah.
interrupting. And I now,
Yeah.
granted, depending on how private the conversation is, there are times you definitely should not jump in. But
Yeah.
they used to say it takes a village because we all helped each other do things. And now we just kind of see everything as separate. And I got interrupted by a thought. Here's a fun fact. What do you think had the biggest change in communication styles in the last 200 years?
I immediately want to say TV.
Okay.
Bob Newhart.
Yeah.
No, that really dates me. I
Yeah.
don't know Bob Newhart.
So
um,
I thought the same thing. I thought, okay, television, cable, modern cell phones. It
yeah.
was actually
Airplanes. I would say airplanes, maybe.
air conditioning
Oh, air
because
conditioning.
the minute we got air conditioning, we quit sitting on our front porches and talking to neighbors. So now
Oh,
you drive into your house, you drive into your garage, you get out, you go in your house, you don't go outside, you don't interact with your neighbors because we want to be inside in air conditioning. And that's why once air conditioning became popular, they quit building houses with big front porches.
I miss those front porches. I grew up on those front porches. You
I
know.
had a historic home that had one, and we would sit out there, and it's a change because
Yeah.
you're out, you see people outside, you say hi, you wave, and it was a really cool. It was built in 1915, and that was my favorite thing was to sit when my daughter was little on the little
I
front
love that.
porch swing and do that. Yeah.
I love that. It's interesting you say that because I think of my neighbors and I think about how much I travel and I fly, and they wonder, I'm sure, who I am and what I do, but they never ask me.
Right.
Um, I do have rocking chairs on my front porch and my back, but I go in the back because I love the
Hmm.
redwood trees. But there isn't, even if I was out front, I love to talk to the dogs, and I walk and I see the same people, but
Hmm.
there's a lot of trepidation on whether to talk to people or not. And
Hmm.
I think everyone's in there and you can feel the energy of, that one time there was a woman, I could see that she couldn't see very well. And I stopped and said, "Hey, can I help you home?" I could see she was struggling. that light had changed and shifted. And I thought, oh, she's got macular degeneration. I could see
Hmm.
it. I could feel it. She can't see and she's a little confused. And I helped her home, but I could have just blown on by. Like, I don't want to interrupt her and I don't want to embarrass her. But I think we're afraid of doing that. We're afraid of looking at people in the face and saying, I can see pain. So
Hmm.
I was in line in the airport and I turned around. There was a conversation. I could feel the struggle. I knew he was bottoming out. She's
Yep.
trying to support him. And I just said, listen, it's all going to be okay. And he goes, how do you know? He just engaged. And I'm like,
Yeah.
we're waiting to go through security. And it was the longest line I'd ever been in.
Hmm.
I could see that he had just been to LA to visit his son. I could see that he felt disconnected, overwhelmed, was going to be cut off. He wasn't good enough. He was self-doubting. I could see it all unfold. He's going to have a great connection. This girl was a keeper. I could feel he was afraid she was going to abandon him because the stress of the ex. I'm like, listen, can I just help? And I didn't ask that at first. I just leaned in. And then I said, hey, can I help? And then
Yeah.
they're like, they followed me, got pictures. They figured out where I went to the gate. I'm like, oh, here we are again. And he sat down and said, I changed his life, that I cared enough to
Hmm.
give him. I did care. I wanted to make his day better. If I could go around and do that all day long, I would.
So
I
you
try.
can.
Yeah.
Well, you actually can. That's the way that I end all my presentations. As I say, if you want someone to go practice this skill,
Of course you
start
do.
with the service industry, right? People are overworked, they're
Mhm.
underpaid, and so there's a big popular, oh, I'm going to buy the next person's Starbucks or the next person's coffee. What about if you treat the barista like a person for a minute? Like actually don't hold up the line and have a 15-minute conversation, but check in with the person who's checking you out
Yeah.
and talk to them for a second. Because if I buy the next person's coffee, I affect one person. But if I make the person taking care of other people feel better, then everybody until the next a-hole gets that same level of customer service.
Brian, I love that you just said that. And what that also did was trigger a little bit, a rumble in my gut of shame, because I think in the old days when I felt powerless and broken, I used to get, that's why I probably worked for a lobbyist group. I wasn't a good listener.
Mhm.
I would get my power out of making I didn't leave people feeling better. I would win. Winning is
Yeah.
what I needed in order to feel like I was enough. And now that I know I'm enough and worthy, I go around and I make sure, but I can never pay back enough those moments where I shattered people and I was rude and demanding. And even my grown children that are in their late 30s look at me and say, Mom, I'll have an eyebrow up or I'll be serious. They're like, don't do it. I'm like, I have not done it in 20 plus years, but they remember. They
Yes.
remember my how demanding I was and how
Hmm.
I would, and I'm gonna say I'm a lot of energy to come at somebody.
Yeah.
And there's shame attached to that. And I can't do enough for people in customer service. Even though I fly first class, I don't care where I sit. I'm gonna be as nice and as accommodating. And it's not to make up. I just feel it in my heart. And I'm also there's a process of healing that takes place that I understand now why I did it.
Hmm.
And I think people have to understand why they may be rude to baristas. Why? It's never about the barista not moving fast enough.
Correct.
It's about what they're carrying and how they feel about themselves. And because I don't care how long I have to wait in line, I just trust the process. I mean, it's probably why I have it back up there because I just trust that everything's going to work out beautifully. And you
Hmm.
know what? If you're nice, everything is going to feel so much better.
Yes. Now there's a time to stand your ground. Like occasionally I'll give you a good
Mhm.
example. I was at was it Philadelphia airport and I went to go into one of the lounges and they let 20 people in and they said, oh, there's going to be a long wait. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, I'm just one person. They're like, oh no, we're at max capacity. I'm like, I'm just here. And I'm like, are you sure you can't do anything? And they said, no, I can't. I said, well, that's just really disappointing. I'm one person. I asked if I can use the restroom before I have to go all the way back downstairs. And so you can push back a little bit,
Yeah.
but I've never found that being extremely rude has ever gotten me anywhere. As a
Yeah.
matter of fact, it's the polar opposite. I talk in my speeches about like one time I was flying from Indianapolis, I was supposed to go home, and they delayed my flight, and then they wanted me to go to New York and spend 6 hours in the closed airport until my next
Mm.
flight, like 14 hours of travel. I got there early and I went up to the person working the gate, and there was some strategy behind it, which we'll talk about later. But the way I talked to her, and I just said, hey, look, I'm on the next flight out, second best seat in the house, exit row. But if there's any way I can get on this flight, I'd have a chance to go to New York City since I'm gonna have to go there anyway. I have friends that are there. I'm gonna go to dinner. And, but I made it about her first, and then I made
Yeah.
it about my request.
Yeah, I want you
And
to care about me. I want you to care
yes,
about my travels and what I'm going through. Yeah, I
yes,
totally agree. I didn't used to think that. I thought domination, win, bully them.
right.
I was a bully. And I have to say, It is probably if the one thing I could erase,
Mhm.
but then I wouldn't be who I am today.
You beat me to it. Is the difference is you learned and you altered. That's
Yeah.
what's important. So you said there's never enough that you can do to undo it. I disagree. I think every day that you make a
Mm.
change helps make up for whatever we've all done. And it doesn't matter
Yeah.
what it is, but every day that we make a difference to one person affects one person that we were rude to before.
Yeah.
And like I'm a huge fan while we're on the subject of if somebody pops to mind, I send them a text message. I may have talked to you 6 hours ago, 6 months ago, 6 years ago. If your name pops up, I send you a message because you never know when that message is what changes or saves someone's life.
Yeah.
Like there's a reason you get that thought of that person comes to mind. It
Yeah.
takes you 2 seconds to send them a text. And the way I look at it is if they respond, cool. If they don't, cool. I get up in the morning when I'm doing my social media posting
Making me
and
want
I
to cry.
check.
It's like, oh. Yeah.
Yeah. I see whose birthday it is. I send them a message and I try to text them versus use Facebook or whatever.
Yeah.
But if they respond, it's a bonus. It's not a requirement.
Yeah.
But there's been days when I've been really down and it was that random text message that's there. And there's a really good book. I don't know where this direction's coming from, but there's a book I read a long time ago called Love is a Killer App. And it was by one of the guys who ran Yahoo. And there's a
Yep.
story in the book of he knew that this one guy liked a Nintendo or whatever it was, some type of a gaming console. And he got that as a reward. And the guy came back and said, "You saved my life." And he goes, "What do you mean?" He goes, "I was to the point of I'd already gone through putting a gun in my mouth and dry firing just to practice it all. And I was going to end my life that weekend until you gave me that gaming console." And so you hear about things like that and you're like, there's a reason that things pop into our brain that
Yes.
we should act upon. And the problem is we stop ourselves because we think, oh, no, no, who am I to do this? Well, no,
Yeah.
who are you to not do it?
Yeah.
Because like I just spoke to a bunch of teachers on Monday and I'm actually getting ready to do a post about it. I was typing up before our podcast here and like it wasn't the highest paying gig, but it was one of the most rewarding
Yeah.
because they're impacting lives. And
Yeah, and let's talk about that, Brian, because
yeah,
I think when we send messages, I'm big on what you just said. My team, everyone's birthday is in, as many as I can gather. I'm out there on Facebook. I don't care if they say, I want everyone to know happy birthday. It doesn't matter to me. My clients all get my telephone number and I give tech support, and people are like, I
yeah,
can really text you. I'm like, yes, you really can.
yeah,
And I'm
yeah,
really going to answer. There's no one but me. And I'm
right.
going to leave you a voice memo and it's going to be in depth. And I'm going to help you through this because
Hmm.
what I'm that's what I'm here for. I'm so connected to that. But
Yeah.
it's doesn't matter how popular, how unpopular, how big their name is, how small. It matters to me that they feel seen, heard, connected, and you
Yes.
never know because even people think, "Oh, I never would need a message like that." Or there's thousands of people. It's like cricket sometimes, and I feel as entrepreneurs, we can feel very alone like we're out here on a limb
Oh
like
yeah.
hello, hello. And you'll get that one message. And it's like, I so needed that
Yeah.
because, we're not getting, the world is busy and they think we don't need it. And we all need it. We all need that connection.
Well, how you and I met, Amberly. Have you ever gotten a crappy message from Amberly? Never.
I'm going to say, do you want to do messages me the most?
Amberly?
Amberly,
Yeah.
randomly, all the time,
Yes.
long 5, 6 minutes. And I never say that's too long. I hear it all.
Hmm.
I leave them back equally, unfortunately, as long. I want him to be sure when it, but I can never do that.
That's
But
why I can never reach her.
yeah, probably because it's just, but you know what? She always answers. She's
Yes.
always there.
Hmm.
And she's authentic. Bad day, good day, miserable day, fabulous spin it day. We figure it out. And
Yeah.
that connection is so valuable because her authenticity is something that it's rare. It's
Yes.
rare to find someone to connect with that can always be honest with you. And she
Hmm.
said, Dana, look at how many times she wanted me to speak. And she says, that's not where I want you to go. And I'm like, well, where do you want me to go? That's a perfect 15-minute speech. What do you want from me? That's perfect. She goes,
Yeah.
I don't want the perfect story. I want the real story. And I'm like,
Hmm.
oh yeah, well, I'm gonna have to think about that one. But what she
Right.
did was open that little platform, opened a door to working with a writer that opened a bigger door where I felt like a 10-year-old that wasn't smart enough going up to my, fourth grade teacher. Is this good enough? Is this in this room with Gail Larson, this who's written Gail Bernstein? I mean, Danielle Laporte, I could go on and on how many people she's mentored. And I'm
Right.
like, why am I in this room? I'm not smart enough. But I allowed that 10-year-old to show up. I
Hmm.
wanted who was stopping me from the book to show herself. And man, did she show up. She showed up like, I can't do it. I don't
Yeah.
understand I'm not smart enough. I don't understand the instructions. And you know what? I took some hits in a very small group of very powerful best-selling authors. I took
Hmm.
some big hits from the mentor, and it that was life-changing too.
Yeah.
You make one life-changing move and it opens the door to another and another. And how I met you was just never a fluke. It was energy. I mean, I'm
Hmm.
walking back because I was waiting to go on set, just one of my knees to get a little blood flow in them. And someone said, "Hey, have you met Brian?"
Right.
And you were focused on something else. And I'm like, but you looked like somebody else. And I kind of prejudged someone like, oh, I know him, but no, oh, I don't know him.
Right.
And because it was someone that I wasn't terrifically fond of their energy. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute, what? But I caught myself doing that,
Yeah.
in that moment. And because I felt less open, but it's like, look at that moment and that person introduced me to you. And
Hmm.
I introduced that person to someone. It just, we're all so connected and it's so guided if we let it be.
I spent a majority of my career in corporate America being in rooms I didn't want to be in.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest thing is I used to take vacation days to go to seminars to be in rooms with people who energized me because
Ooh.
I made really good money. I had corporate handcuffs. You mentioned earlier, I went from help desk, 13 promotions later to regional vice president of sales. And I made good money. And on the outside, I looked happy and I was miserable on the inside. And I got fired in 2022. And it was one of the best things that happened to me. Not financially, financially, it sucked.
Yeah.
But when you're not miserable for 8 hours a day, you realize what life is about. And,
Yeah.
I got to then start investing in myself because before I'd be like, hey, what we guys pay for training? And I literally had a boss say, well, I think when I hire salespeople, they should already be trained. I'm like, that's like saying you brushed your teeth once,
Yeah,
So,
that's not gonna work.
yeah.
Yeah.
But now being in rooms, like, in order for Amberly to let me crash y'all's event, and I sat in there and I just watched, and you're right, I was paying attention because I was taking pictures for the people I knew,
You were
like,
micro focused. I mean, we
yeah.
barely made, I mean, I know you were to my right. I
Mhm.
felt your energy and it was all in. And I'm like, okay, now's not the time to have a conversation with him.
Yeah.
And then of course I leaned in afterwards and I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta know him.
Yeah, it was, oh gosh, what's her, Life Out Loud podcast? She's in Amberly's group,
Jillian.
Jillian.
I've been on her
Yes.
podcast. Yeah, I adore her. Fabulous
Yes.
human.
It was her and Amberly asking John Gordon questions, and I wanted to get a picture of those two from behind, taking pictures to the front. Because when I go, the way I look at it is I want to be there to help document what's going on because having put on events and been a part of them, it's a blur. It's like your wedding day. You know you were there, but you don't really remember what happened.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I like to go and take pictures that the photographers aren't.
So
And
more value. I mean, there you are, smack in the middle. That's why, and more value. You go and you bring more value to it. How
yeah.
did how did you land in this spot of not only facial decoding and recognition, but
Mhm.
landing in this spot? Get fired. Here you are, adding more value. Were you just like born this way with this incredible heart, or did it morph
It
into?
morphed over time. So as I mentioned, very gregarious as a kid and then kind of told don't be so gregarious, and so then I
Yeah.
became kind of introverted. And I had a lot of struggles with communication growing up on some different things, and I always felt like I missed that day at class, like I was there. I had a dad who is absolutely amazing. He designed the plans for the second floor of our house and everything, but to work with him on projects he'd say go get me the thing, and I didn't know what the thing was because that's not the right name.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of flustered by communication. So what does every good introvert do? We try and outlearn it.
Yeah.
And so it's a learned skill. But then what I realized is when I started going and doing things for other people, it's kind of what they say is if you ever want to change your mood, do something for someone else. When I go with the intent to learn, if you ever saw my nerdy notes when I'm at a seminar, even if I'm a speaker, I'm taking notes from the other speakers because I want to learn while I'm there. But I learned a long time ago, but that you also do things you can't. Like I'll have to show you after this. One of my favorite photos is from a buddy's wedding where this guy is a total introvert, and it's a picture of him at just the right time, going like this, surrounded by all of his friends, and that it memorized that moment.
You
And I
you
still have that
captured it.
picture.
You
Yeah.
captured it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so
Ah,
I'm a visual person, so I love photos. So that's one of the things I realized is whenever I go to events, I try and find photos because, like I said, the photographers sometimes are focused on the big celebrities and what's going on with the big people who are there, but they forget
yeah.
there's an entire audience that's there. And sometimes
Yeah.
that means more to the organizer
Yeah.
than the rest.
Well, I
Uh,
mean, I have one picture, my first event, I have one picture of somebody that took a picture of me hugging someone crying, and it
yeah.
was such a heartfelt hug. I still use that picture. And it
Yes.
wasn't, we didn't use any pictures of the professional. In fact, I rarely do, but
Yeah.
it's the people that capture moments and say, hey, I got this. Maybe you'd like it. I mean, I love that picture.
So this is going to be a kind of side thought for a minute. When I was married, I bought the website Open Bar Wedding Photography, and my whole thing was like, "Hey, look, invite me to your wedding as long as there's an open bar and I can bring my wife. We'll go and I'll just take these random pictures that aren't the photographers, and that way you'll just have that. It's not going to cost you anything but a plate of food and whatever, and we'll give us a backstory, kind of like Wedding Crashers, because I
Oh, I
thought that would be
love
a
it.
fun way to do it.
Okay,
So yes,
Brian, you're invited to everywhere I speak. I'm going to have you like you're going to get a press pass and
yeah,
you're going to just do your because I can see, I felt you how your focus and I
mhm,
couldn't penetrate. You didn't even move your head. I know
yeah.
you acknowledged, but I could feel the intensity and the focus that you had a mission.
Yeah.
So,
And it
yeah.
wasn't, and for people listening, it wasn't meant to be rude. It's you and I
No.
were conversing, but I wanted to
Yeah.
stick to what I was working on
I
while also
appreciated it
being,
because I'm
yeah,
like,
no,
yeah, he's devoted and I can see what
yeah,
he's doing. He's whatever he's doing, he's giving it his 100% his attention.
yeah.
It wasn't, yeah, you couldn't be swayed. And I liked that. It actually, I found it admirable because it was kind of an interruption and the middle of something. But you were very polite. And I mean, look, it left a huge impact on me because I'm like, we need Brian. And I got to say it again, Galke, and I said first
Yeah.
Galgi, and I'm like Galke. I love
Yeah.
the way you say Galke. We have to have him. We have
Yeah.
to have him. We have to have a no limitation. We need him to read my face. We need a story. We need to. Your conversations are fascinating, and we might do this in two parts. And I believe we probably will because it's worth a two-part series.
And we haven't even dug into what we want. And that's why I like that. I
Yeah,
like when it's not scripted because
yeah.
everything we're talking about, somebody likely needs to hear.
Well, I can't see anything
Yeah.
so far that we cut. Maybe my
Right.
story on the thermos, but that's it. And she
No,
probably
I
will.
think it's
Dana, that's not.
important, right? Because what people don't realize is anything can be learned. Now, like you said, you pick up on people and things. I think there's reasons that people have learned to pick up on things. Sometimes it was for safety, security, you name it. Some
Yes.
people just pay more attention. If you've ever listened to Ed Milet, very, very famous speaker, if anybody
Yes.
doesn't know who he is, look at it. He tells you the reason he's so good at dealing with people was he had an alcoholic father that would beat them. And
Mhm.
he knew when the car
You
pulled
needed
up,
to,
he
yeah,
had to
you needed
stop
to
and
read the
listen.
energy. You had to know.
Yes.
You had to hear the
Yes.
footsteps. You had to feel the door open. You
Yep.
can, yeah, those tentacles go up. Yeah, I identify a lot with that. But then you add a psychic intuitive on top of it, being born
Right.
like a freak sometimes because you're like, I'm not interested. I don't want to know. I don't want to know because God can't see me if I know this,
Yeah.
and I still get it. You can't be that and belong to God. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to be 60 in October. I don't want to hear any
Yeah.
more of that. I've spent my whole life curating who I am and embracing it, and I
Hmm.
have to be who I am. But yes, there's the core wound of
Hmm.
safety will make us very, very good readers.
Hyper
On
vigilant. Yeah.
hyper
Vigilant.
vigilant. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, we've got those little tentacles up because we need to read that room because we need to know
Mhm.
if we're safe or not.
Right. And so some people learn it and they're like, well, I'm just naturally good at reading people. Well, it's probably from something like that. Me, I had
Yeah,
to learn it through books and other things. And one of the things
yeah,
I forgot to mention earlier. So learning, it's called physiognomy and it's basically face reading. The whole reason I call it decoding facial features is because as soon as I say face reading, people are like, ooh, can you read palms too? And it kind of devalues it, but it's
yeah,
really face reading.
yeah.
It was part of the academic system until Henry VIII said, I don't like the idea that beggars and vagabonds can use this against their fellow man. So up until
Oh,
then, this was taught
wow.
in school. It goes all the way back to Aristotle. And the reason I bring that up is
Mm,
people think I was born with this gift. No, this is rote memorization and study,
yeah.
just like every language we've learned. This is just the language of someone's face. And I'm a huge, huge fan of body language. and statement analysis, but those are reactive skills. And what really truly changed this for me was it was the first proactive skill that I ever ran across. So if I'm going to meet with someone
Mm.
and I know who they are and I go and look them up on LinkedIn, social media, I can get an idea of who I'm talking to. What do we have in
Mm.
common? What's different? And how do I try and change it for your perspective so that I'm speaking your language? And um, pardon with me for another analogy, but I like stories because it makes sense to more
I
people.
love stories. I love
Okay.
analogies. You're speaking my language.
Okay.
I'm like, I'm
So
all in. I'm all
I'm going to
in.
give you two different extremes of the same story. First is when I was really young, I would travel when was lucky enough to travel to other countries. I thought they should all speak English. And if they don't, well, I'll speak English louder. That doesn't really go over very well. But when I learned basic phrases, like we just got back from Italy a week ago, and please, thank you, good morning, good afternoon. When you try to speak someone else's language, they try to speak yours. But if you demand that they only speak my language, it doesn't work so well. So that was the first thing I realized is I'm extremely visual. But if I'm talking to someone who's auditory, then I need to say things like, hey, does this sound like a good idea? Do you hear where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
Versus I will say, oh, can't you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What is it that you can't picture here? So it's just learning to adapt to other people.
Yeah.
And when you make people feel seen and heard, I went to a wedding in Jekyll Island, which is the Florida Georgia line.
Yeah.
And our server, he came over and he said he was from Budapest. Well, we had been there and so the first time he came around to fill our glasses, we walked away. I got on my phone. I'm like, looked up, how do you say thank you in gosh, Hungarian.
Yeah.
And so he came back and he's filling up our glasses and I go, Kostanom. He goes, what? I said, well, I wanted to say thank you for taking care of us. That, and he's like, oh, you've been to Budapest? I said, yeah, we stayed. And this is where, talk to the guy for 2 minutes. Now, not only was my wine glass never empty, but neither was his other three tables because he felt seen, heard, and valued. It
Yeah.
cost me nothing. But that's why I say practice on servers because a lot of the hotels are, you're behind the scenes. No one makes eye contact with you. That will mess with your head after a while because you're around people who don't acknowledge you. So I sit there and say on my talks, if they've got people in clearing the rooms and everything, I'm like, here's the best person to practice to. Have you think that person that's picking up your this, that? Because I get that it's part of a service being provided, but it
Yeah.
doesn't make them any less human. And we all crave connection and contact with others.
I love that, Brian. Just getting back from I love the resort I was just at. I was there 30 years ago. The Camelback Inn, where time
Oh,
stands
yes.
still. I have
Oh,
huge memories 30 years ago of taking my children. They were 5 and 6, and now they're 35 and 36. And I'm like, it's been 30 years since I've been here.
yeah.
And the staff was exclusive back then. We had our own butler, our own pool. I had
Wow.
my nanny. Well, I had the federal
Yeah.
chamber paying for it. Now I'm paying for it. I've got it. They upgrade me. They're like, oh, welcome back. They're still so lovely. I see
Yeah.
where I just feel it. But something in my heart just expanded my connection with it. But I said, they're working at 100 and it was so hot. And those
Yes.
little carts are driving me around everywhere and they're
Uh-huh.
like jolly on the spot. I had $10 bills. I tipped a lot. And they just said, you don't need, I said, listen, you didn't need to be here. You didn't need to
Right.
walk up to my room. You didn't need to wait till I got in safely. And every time they said, oh, Miss Grant, welcome back. Restaurants. Miss Grant, it's so good to see you again. I know you love the cactus water. Can I get,
Mhm.
they remembered my name. And even everyone
Uh-huh.
I met dinner with from that point on said, have you been here before? Like 30 years ago. But
Exactly.
because it wasn't just the tipping, I think the energy of money's just the energy, and that was just a double down. But it was about, hey, where are you from? What makes you drive this cart out here? And he said, look at the mountain, look at the sky, and I'm like, wow, I wanted to know,
Exactly.
about them, and it's yeah, you got
It
to lean in.
you had the conversation before the cash. That's what
Yeah.
made the difference. The
Oh, I
cash
love
was
that
just
conversation before the cash.
yeah.
Yep.
And that's what drives people nuts right now about the whole tipping situation is people won't even talk to you. Like, if you get me a bottle of water, I'm not tipping you 20%. That
No.
is meant to be for if you do work or bring something to me,
Yeah.
not hand it to me. But we've
Yeah.
gotten into that society where people are anti-tipping for the right, wrong reasons. And what I mean by
Yeah.
that, I realize it's kind of a convoluted sentence, but
Well, but you know what? It's a valuable one, and there's a lot of conversation. So I'm leaning in hard on this one because
yeah,
I love to tip, but I will not tip like you said for the bot. I'm not going to tip for the wrong reasons, not
right.
especially when you expect it and you weren't even no.
Yeah. Like, and I'll give you the good examples of this. If you've ever been to a resort in Mexico, And not all resorts, but a majority of the places you're like, hi, can I get a drink? They're like, yep. Before they'll even get you anything. Versus if you
Yeah.
go to a resort in Jamaica and you tip them, it's offensive because they go to school to get a good job at a resort and they make
Yeah.
good money and can provide for their family. And so they consider it rude to learn to tip there. And so, like here in the US, you shouldn't have to tip for very basic things.
Yeah.
And when I say this, anybody who's really offended, I waited tables, I bartended, I was a bouncer. I'm not
Me
saying don't
too.
tip.
Yeah.
I'm saying
Me too.
we shouldn't have to tip for basic things. What tipping was meant to be for is the people who don't make a good hourly wage who are providing a
Right.
service that their level of service depends or determines their tip, right? So I'm a big fan of that. But
Well, then the
tipping because
percentage, now the 8% that they get on on their tax bill on people's food, then we had to cover that. And of course,
yes,
both parties right now are saying we're going to abolish that. Well, you should have done that. You never should have added it in.
agree
It should have
wholeheartedly.
never been added in. But interesting. Mexico. I just did my daughter's wedding 2 years ago. It was all
Mhm.
inclusive. It's much more expensive than I thought. I love Mexico, but why is it so expensive? Or
Yeah.
and then I'm like, well, we'll have all our meals. Then the tip is added in. But if I didn't add in another huge tip,
Yes.
we weren't going to get the next
Uh,
night. They were going to let us sit there. We weren't going to get drinks. I mean, I'm going to tell you, they, I had one of a great little suite in front on the beach. They went
mhm.
and knocked on the door and said, was everything okay? And I
Yeah.
signed for everybody. And I'm like, I'm not responsible for 50 people and
Right.
tip because I've been giving them an extra 500 a night. And I'm like, I can't do it every night for
Yeah.
10 days. I'm done
Right.
with this. And it's built in.
Yeah.
And I didn't know it, but I didn't know it. But yeah, they wouldn't. And I felt hostage for the tip. There's something going
Yes.
on in Mexico. I got to explore that one. But
Yeah.
yeah, it really illuminated that process for me that I'm not now, if I don't tip, I'm going to get super bad service each day.
Yes. Now, on the opposite side, just being in Italy, well, servers, there's a table charge for every
Yeah.
person at the table. That's their tip.
Yeah.
And so when I was young, I did a study abroad in Florence. And the first like week, I was pissed everywhere I went somewhere because I'm like, where's the server? Why can't I order? And I realized it's because it's a way of life.
Yeah.
Come in,
Yeah.
relax. We'll take
Yeah.
care of you. We're not in a rush. You're not in a rush. And that's one of the things I got to appreciate now being 49, being back in Italy for this is probably my fifth time back to Italy. But I go there to learn to unwind and enjoy the experience instead of here where you're nervous, like, okay, I need to eat fast so the server can make more money. So I got to flip tables.
Yeah, Brian, you
It's
probably
just,
don't know this, but I do a women's retreat in Italy every year.
oh,
Florence, Firenze, Rome.
yeah,
I want them to slow down and understand what it's like to, dolce far niente. I have it on a bench outside my door, the sweetness of doing nothing, of just
yes.
being present in this beautiful country. We
Hmm.
don't need to hurry and do anything, but just dine. The food there's exquisite, but I mean, there's just but we're like, where's our food?
Yeah,
Where's our drinks? Where's our server?
that's right.
But it's
I sat down 2 seconds ago. Where are they? You know,
yes. I learned that one the hard way. Yes.
yes. Well, I do want to give your audience
Yeah.
some takeaways.
Yeah.
Do you want to start with analyzing your face? Or you want to save that for part two? How do you want to kind of close out? Because I know we're running up against time.
We are, and I could talk to you forever. It's like
Yeah, so we'll do it
it
offline.
just
I don't
yeah,
care.
it
No,
just keeps
everybody else.
unfolding. Why
Yeah.
don't we just do my face? Let's go there.
Okay.
Let's start there.
All right. So I'm gonna move some things around. People are watching. You have to see my eyes kind of go all over.
Mm.
All right. So I'm going to, where is my screen capture software here? All right. So I'm gonna have you look. Oops, hold on one second. Move over here. Screen snap. Okay. So you're just gonna look at the camera straight ahead, right in. Got it. Okay.
Where I
All
should have
right.
been probably looking the whole time. My team always
Yeah.
says, "Look at the camera," and I'm like, "But I'm busy looking at him." And they're like, "But people look at the
Well, it's
camera."
funny. I actually, that's one of the things I teach is go and buy a post note and put it right by your camera so that you are always looking where the arrow is instead of the Brady Bunch. Now, my setup right here, you can't see it, is my camera's here, my monitor's behind the camera. So I'm
Yeah.
looking at you while I'm looking at the camera.
And I'm looking at you on the screen, and they're always saying, "You're not looking where you need to." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, there I am. Now I'm looking
Yep.
in the camera.
Right.
I'll learn. It's a process."
It is. All right. So I'm going to draw a few arrows and we'll kind of explain what things are at the same time. So we'll
Okay.
go
The glasses on for this.
here, go here. We're gonna draw a little bit here. This one's gonna be the one that's kind of funny, but you'll understand why in a second. All right, then we're gonna go back to here. You've got the cube. Well, actually, let me back one out. Nostril. Then here you've got the Cupid's bow, strong rounded chin, and here. Okay. So we're gonna go one arrow at a time and kind of explain what they are, and then I'll take them down as we go. So what's interesting is notice how you have two different style of eyebrows when you look at this. So you can
Yeah.
tell this one is more rounded, this one is more straight and then rounds off here. Now the
Mhm.
difference between those two, and here, let me do this so your audience can kind of see what we're talking about. All right. So we got the straight one there, and then the rounded one is here. Okay. So this one is more straight, but look at how this one rounds. So the way that our faces are designed is we have a personal side and a professional side. So if I was to do this and draw a line right down the center of your face, this side over here, where a wedding ring is your personal side. Doesn't matter male, female, where in the world you're born. It's about right brain versus left brain thinking. So when you
Mhm.
look at someone and you think, okay, I can't remember which one's their personal side and which one's their professional side. In the US, if I said, hey, are you married? That's a personal question. A wedding ring goes on the left hand. So I don't
So
have
your
one.
so your
So, but
feminine side. So
yes,
it would be on my feminine receiving side. Okay.
correct. So that is the personal side of your face. So see how that eyebrow here is rounded. So what that says is in your personal life, you think about others first and yourself second. Okay. Because rounded eyebrow people think about the people around them first and then
Mhm.
them. So if I'm going and talking to you on something on a personal side and I try and make it all about you, I'm not speaking your language. Now, if you had an angled eyebrow like I do, that's what's my angle. Help me understand it so then I can help other people. Now, we're both trying to help people. It's just a matter of how do we learn it first and then share it with other people. And
Mhm.
now going to your business side over here, this is your professional side. Look how it's more straight and then it rounds
Mhm.
off at the very, very end. So that's straight to the point, facts, figures, data, right? That's how you want the information to be presented to you. So we'll
Mhm.
get rid of those two. Now we've covered those.
Spot on so far.
Now, here you have a fuller eyelid. And you have a fuller eyelid on your personal side. You still have one on your professional side, but it's definitely fuller here.
Mhm.
So fuller lids are we people versus me people. So at home, once again, you're more a part of, okay, who's going to go do things with me? But on your professional side, it's thinner. So you're fine doing things alone. If other people join you, it's a bonus versus a requirement. But personal, you don't like to do stuff by yourself. You prefer if people go with you. And that's the fuller part of the lid here versus on this side.
Mhm.
So we get rid of that one. Now you see these two here, and I'll make them a different color so your audience can see it a little bit better. Is what's interesting also is see how on your personal side, it's straight across. So that's even balance. Tell me the pros and the cons. However, on your work side, it slightly angles up here. So when it slightly angles up, you want to hear about more of the positive side than the negative side. So some people's eyes angle down because they're worried about the downside. Hey, have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? So QA, help desk, troubleshooting. If I show you a picture of me at 18 versus 38, my eyes used to angle down because I was raised in a household that said, hey, go for what you're chasing, but things don't always work out. What's your backup plan? What else are you going to do?
Mhm.
So if your eyes angle down, then I talk about here's the downsides and things that we've had, problems we've had in the past and how we've overcome them. So I'm
Mhm.
still getting to the positives, but I start with what we had that were problems in the past. Now for you, your eyes angle up slightly. So you want to hear more of the positive side of things. So if I come in with too much negativity too fast, you're like, oh, okay, you tend to back away. So start with the positive, and if I had to deliver bad news, I'd go positive and then get to the bad news with you. Like if you look at Amberly's, both of hers angle up so much. That's why she's so freaking positive all the time. And I mean that in the nicest way.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Um, why people come and talk to you is twofold. One, look at how high and wide your cheeks are right here. So you have what's known as healer cheeks. So let me show you what it looks like with this. If I am to draw where your cheeks are, the highest and widest part of your cheeks on both sides are right there. So let me go here. So if we open up books of caregivers, people who took care of us, they all have healer cheeks here. So that's why people will come and talk to you. So cheeks are like energy gauges from the nose. So the wider out they are, the more that people can keep going and going. But then when they flare out to the sides, there's usually two sides. If they're angled, those are called warrior cheeks. And that is, I have a lot of strength and tenacity for the things I have to fight for, or I have a lot of strength that I can help take care of other people. So you can keep going and going and going and taking care of others. But when you see like this rounded eyebrow and then this rounded cheek, people go, ah, she'll come and listen to me. And that's when people subconsciously know this. And when I say that, I mentioned it used to be part of the academic system. Well, while Henry VIII had it removed, authors and artists took courses in physiognomy to learn how to do character development in all their books. So think about all the required reading when we were in school. We've been taught a little bit about people and their facial features. So if you go and Google physiognomy and like Dickinson or Edgar Allan Poe, it talks about how they took courses and that physiognomy influenced their writing for character development. Okay.
Love it.
Then we come in. Let me get rid of this part. Now, I can't see it in this picture, but remind me, when you smile big, do you have that little line below your nose and above your mouth?
Let's see.
Okay, hold on. Let me pin you as the, let me stop sharing here.
Mm.
I think I
Yeah.
see a little, yeah, you do.
Yep.
Okay, so that's called the forced smile lines. What that is you were raised in an environment that you're told to always have a smile on your face, no matter what's going on, or people in the profession, actors, actresses, models, where they have to have a smile, and it's not a genuine, the way the muscles pull it, it creates that little line right there, and that's called a forced smile line. So what that means is if somebody does have that, then I don't know if it's their default smile or if it's an actual smile. So I do a double check when I'm talking to them. So let me get rid of
Mm.
that one there. So that's why I say there is no right or wrong feature. Now I'm going to get rid of this line, but that's for a reason. One of the other things that you have that's really good, let me go back to purple here, is you have what's known as a Cupid's bow. So Cupid's bow is this arrow right here in your upper lip. So you see it on this side and here. That's a subconscious sign that says, listen to me when I talk. So that's great that you have that. Anytime you're doing a presentation, make sure and highlight that with lip liner, lip gloss, whatever you guys use. Yeah.
I always try to smear that out because it's so. So I always, yeah, it's so funny. I use yeah, it's good to know. I'll
Yeah.
stop smearing that out.
You should. Strong jaw right here. This is what you have. So once you make up your mind, pretty damn stubborn, right? And we can see that on both sides. So if I draw right here, you can see it's on there. So what that means is once you make up your mind, it's hell to get you to change your mind. So I have to come with, because you've got on your professional side here, that straight eyebrow, I got to come with a lot of facts, figures, and data before you're willing to unclench that jaw and change your position. And then
Yes.
last but not least, good, strong, rounded chin. So when we say take one on the chin, it's not a boxing term. It's actually talking about how we handle criticism and adversity. And so when you see someone with a rounded chin right here, that is, I take one on the chin for the people I care about, my friends, my family, my coworkers, you name it. So that's one of the reasons that people feel so comfortable talking and sharing information with you is not only do you have like the rounded eyebrow and the healer cheeks here, but you also have that Cupid's bow and then a rounded chin here. So like if you talk about negative features or anything, well, the strong jaw isn't a negative feature, but it knows I got one shot to get this right, or else it's going to be hell for me to get her to change her mind later on, if that
That would
makes
be.
sense.
Oh,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. I'm a Libra and I like to be in balance, but it's nothing good about me being out of balance
Yeah.
with when I get my mindset on things. I'm very, very focused on my determination on the facts and figures. And it's like you said, bring me the facts, bring me the figures. I'm a straight talker. Do not
Yes.
smoke and mirror me. I got no time. I'm bored out of my mind. I'm daydreaming. I'm out of there. You've
Uh-huh.
lost me. You've lost
Yep.
me at go. And I'm like, okay, well, thanks anyway. It just doesn't, yeah,
Yeah.
straight talkers, the truth.
Hmm.
And, and I think it's because I come from a lot of trauma. I come from a
Right.
lot of trauma. I come from a lot of not knowing the truth, creating a lot of smoke and mirrors, creating a lot of stories to survive in, and that obviously no longer serve me. But living in this truth, I've got no more time for it, but I can recognize it very quickly. And I'm like, I can't
Exactly.
do it. I have love and compassion for you, so much love, but we're going to unpack it. We're going to get to the truth, but we're not doing that
Well,
because,
it's like if you
yeah,
learn a magic trick, you no longer are amused by the magic trick. You learn how to see past it. And that's the whole
Yeah.
thing. Because you did it, that was part of
Good
your trick. You
analogy.
know how it works.
Yeah.
And that's why you don't succumb to it, because you're like, I know what you're doing. I used to do that.
Yeah, I got a letter, and I'm going to talk about this here. I got a letter when I got back from Santa Fe after I felt like the 10-year-old,
Hmm.
didn't feel good enough to write this book, and I had to unpack all that and meet myself there. I got home and it was sitting right on my computer, and it was like you could see the handwriting was a little bit all over that. And I'm like, that's strange. I got a handwritten letter, and no return address. Now I got one 7 years ago, but it was sent
Yeah.
out to people of influence. This one was sent to me, telling me who I was. And
Hmm.
and and I'm like, wow, this person is invested in every piece of my story all the way back. They're so stuck there. They're so obsessed. I mean, obsessed. It freaked me out for a moment.
Yeah.
And then I realized it had nothing to do with me. It wasn't about me at all, with the exception of the focus on me. But
Hmm.
this, you know, the story I could have bought back into the old story, or I
Yep.
could have said, "Oh, wow, you know what? I haven't been that. I'm not even the same person I was a year ago or a
Right.
month ago." And I really believe that if we are devoted to this growth, if we're devoted to learning, like what you just said about my face was so absolutely true. I take way too much on the chin, and I do care deeply, and I think that's what, and I want to hear people. I
Right.
want them to feel heard, understood, held, and I'll do everything I can to move that needle,
Yeah.
everything I can. And it's like I'm not leaving anything on the table. We're gonna unpack it all. I've got a big box of tools, and we're gonna dump it all out and see what works for you. And that's why I love the one-on-one stuff. Being on stage is great, but it's like I have a hard time giving that up because you can really see people when you're looking at them, and they
100%.
trust you enough to unpack the stuff that they've never talked about.
I'm going to show you something because unplanned. I love this. Hold on.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't plan any of this.
I know. So
Our
I was
teams are probably
having,
going crazy.
yeah.
Like,
Will
what
you
do you
guys
guys do in
stop
part
talking
three?
now?
Yeah, no, we're not. We're going for part three now. Yeah.
So I was at an event and it was in Nashville and there was somebody in the audience. And I saw her taking notes. I was like, well, that's interesting. And when I said, oh, like I take notes like you do, and she flipped over a piece of paper and I didn't know why. But so that was in March. And in May, I was just having one of those days where I thought, screw it, I'm gonna go back to corporate America. I'm done with this, you know. And this showed up in the mail. And it was she heard me say I'm a Batman fan, and it was a handwritten letter from somebody there, like from the event I was speaking at. And then you can't read all the words below, but it's like, hey, you impacted my life. You're doing the thing that you're meant to do. And
Love
so
it.
it sits over here so that I see it, because
Yeah.
it's very easy to want to quit. And I
Yeah.
know, look, there's a ton of matrix analogies when you're an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
because I used to be in corporate America for 21 and a half years. I was brainwashed that you need to work for a company to provide value, and somebody else tells you your worth and all
Yeah.
these things. And so it's very easy to want to go back to that level of control and let someone else be in charge.
Yeah.
But like that is what kept me from quitting, going back to corporate America,
Yeah.
you know?
Never
So it's the,
surrender.
yeah,
Brian, never surrender. What my
yeah,
jaw says is never surrender. I'm not giving
yeah.
this up. I know where I'm going. I'm not
Mhm.
giving it up. Not when a letter comes in like that. I love that positive. I love the
Yeah,
positive, but I also believe that I can't invest. I have to lean into that and say, that's wonderful but if all my value is attached to that, and all my value is attached to that horrible, ugly, terrible letter,
hmm,
the rug's going to be pulled out from underneath me either way. If I invest everything in it, I've got to know who I am, and know that sometimes it's all me,
yeah,
and sometimes the world and who we surround ourselves with is going to send us a note or something wonderful, but the bad stuff's going to happen too. And when we're
100%.
out there, we're going to get that too, and we can't let anything take us down. We just have to stay this course,
Yes.
and believe that everything that's in front of us, we're connected to, and they're there for
Mhm.
a reason. You and I were connected for a reason. We're
Right.
going to put this podcast out there. People are going to go, oh my gosh, this changed my life. And I look at, and I'm connected to things so differently, because I think having just the conversation without us scripting this, I mean, I had 3 pages of notes I haven't even looked at. I'm like, I'm sure I could have dove into and you've been on 100,000 podcasts. Well, maybe
Yeah.
not that many, but a lot.
Yeah.
But I wanted to have a different kind of conversation
I
with you.
love this.
Yeah, I wanted to just meet you where you were, and
Hmm.
and have that unpacked. And I also always end with one question. Well,
Yes.
I decided I would end with one question. And I think it's so important for me that we understand what love feels like. And I want to know for you, what feels like love? What feels like love in this world and this connection and it can be
Yeah.
personal, it can be business, but what first came to mind when you dropped in and said, this feels like love? I want to know what that feels
Yeah.
like for Brian.
The look of love for me is recognition and happiness when you see someone. And
Mm,
obviously there's varying levels. And what I mean is when you walk in somewhere and you see that people are genuinely excited to see you,
yeah,
that's love. Because the one thing that we're all short on is time.
yeah,
And when people are excited to see you and give up part of their time to be around you, it's a good feeling. That's how I feel loved. Now that's on a global scale.
yeah,
When I'm divorced and I get my daughter 3 days a week, my ex has her 4 days a week, except for she's fantastic about covering when I have speaking gigs, things of that nature.
yeah,
But those days away are hard, even with this day and age with Facebook, or sorry, not Facebook, FaceTime, where I can see
yeah,
her, but I don't get to hold her. When I get to see my daughter and she runs towards me and wants a hug, or when we're creating those moments that I know this is one of those, I just watched Inside Out too,
yeah.
one of
This
those
is
core memories.
oh yeah,
That's love. Like,
yeah.
Italy was meant to be like me and my ex, and I'm going to deviate for just a second.
No,
We're
deviate.
divorced. We're divorced, but we know that co-parenting, we're going to be in each other's lives for the rest of our lives. And we focus on creating memories for her because I grew up in a divorced family where I have memories with mom or with dad. And we want her to know she's loved and she's not the reason we didn't work out. Truthfully, we never should have been married. We made better friends than we did husband and wife. And so we did the Italy trip with the two of us. And was it perfect? No. But it was much better as co-parents than it would have been if we were still married.
Yeah,
And that's
yeah,
love because it's two people going, we may have our differences and we could hold on to our grievances from the past, but we're creating memories with our daughter for all three of us to have memories. That's love also.
wow. I felt that. I felt that. And that's what I want to leave people with. I want to leave them with the feeling, not just who you are. I want to know how they can connect with you, but that right there,
Yeah.
wow. I
Yeah.
almost want to quote that. That's beautiful. But if we could share that with the world, that
Yeah.
hey, we're better friends and we're sharing this and we're doing this because we're going to make a better world. That that was so expansive and felt like love to me. We're going to make a better
Yeah.
world. We're committed to this. I love that. So how can people find you? How can they connect with you? What's the
Sure.
best way?
Uh, I'm on all the platforms as subtle skills, SUBTLE skills. What I
Mhm.
realized, no one can say that. So if you just want the cheat sheet of what we covered today, you can go to getthecheatsheet.com and that'll redirect you to all my stuff.
Oh, I love it. Now, can people, what you did for me today, read, if they say, Brian, I want you to read my face, I need to know, or I want to know more, so they can find where you're speaking? Because I know you got a lot of gigs coming up.
Hmm.
Tell me what you got coming up and tell me, are you going to, if someone reaches out and says, hey, I just need to know
Yeah. So,
how I show up in the world. Are you able to
absolutely.
do that?
It's a combination. So it can be how a lot of people, when I go to an event, that's what they'll buy VIP for, is to have me analyze their face and kind of explain who they are. And so if we can't get to them at an event, yes, you can reach out and we charge for that.
Yeah.
Another one is like I help marketers if they have a big presentation, they send a picture of their ideal client, who they're going to go talk to, and then we review their presentation. So there's like a consulting wing to that. Like I
Mhm.
help a digital marketer. He had a big client that was six figures. We
Mhm.
spent 2 hours looking at the person, fixing his pitch, and he won that six-figure client without them ever asking the cost. So
I
that's an
love
option.
it.
And then I have training, courses, you name it. I'm writing a book that should be out in the next few months. I basically took some of the information I learned, but it was too much. It was like getting an encyclopedia set. So mine will be in a three-series book of basic, intermediate, and advanced.
Oh,
And
I
then
love it.
speaking, oh man, summer's kind of dry because a lot of people take their kids out. But next week I'll
Mhm.
be in Florida. Then I'm attending an event in California, just real quick in and out trip. And in September, I'm speaking in Nashville, Philly, Vegas, here in Fort Worth, and I'm forgetting somewhere. So September, I'm gone almost every. Oh, Miami. I'll
Yeah.
be speaking at an event in
So
Miami.
if they
So
go to your website, they can find where you're at because
yes.
I know you pull people up on the stage
Oh yeah.
and yeah, I love that. I'm like, oh, what are they gonna and sometimes they're like, I could see that's not true. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I
Well,
love
the best
I
thing
love
is
it.
when we pull somebody up on stage, it's not their reaction because we all really don't know ourselves that well. But I
Mm-mm.
just did this for the teachers I mentioned last Monday, and it's their staff. They're like, "Oh yeah, that's her," because sometimes we think, "Oh,
Yeah.
I'm not that way," and it's when
Yeah.
everybody else gets it. That's the affirmation that the skills they learned earlier are
Yeah.
applicable, and it encourages them to go do it. That's why I bring volunteers up because Anybody
Mhm.
can get up and spout information and say it's true, but I want to show people and they get the repetition of what they just learned. So then they're
Yeah.
excited to go out. So I'm not a motivational speaker. I'm a tactical speaker because
You
I want you to be
definitely
able
are.
to
Yeah.
walk out the room
Yeah.
and start putting this into practice because it helps everyone.
Yeah, I love that about you. I love the fact it's tactical. But if I look at the other modalities that are out there and things that people utilize to read, it aligns with so much. And the truth of what you do, I mean, you validated like six other things of reads I've had on me that I'm like,
Yeah.
that's right, that's right. And you did it in reading my face. They did it, and different ways of breaking it down,
Yeah.
of psychological impact. And I'm like, well, there you go. There you
Hmm.
go. And I am left-handed, and you brought that up several times, and I'm like, he probably knows I'm a lefty too,
Exactly.
and a creative because I love it. Brian,
Yes.
you are a joy to spend time with. I'm just this was so much fun for me.
Yes. Let's do a part two. We'll do it later on. You get your other guests in. Let's come back and do it again.
Whether we know we're doing this again. I'm just gonna
Yes.
have to nail you down when you're I know that you're busy, but we're just gonna, yeah, hopefully that you'll just say, I'm all in and we're
Oh,
doing it.
yes.
And I can't wait.
Yes.
Thank
Well,
you. Thank you
I,
so much for being here.
can I leave one parting part?
You bet.
Okay.
Absolutely.
What I loved about when you reached out to me is you said, I have been waiting to do this for so long, and I am 1,000% committed. Nothing will stop me from doing this podcast. That's what I love about being here today, is that level of saying, I'm all in is just inspiring. It really, truly is. Because a lot of people come up
Yeah.
with excuses as to why not do things. But I think I even said on our
Mm.
voice text, I'm going to steal this because you're like, nothing will get in my way from stopping me from doing this.
I could remember, but that I'm so authentic when I leave those voice memos. It's so guided and so genuine that I didn't know I said exactly that. But you can't make this stuff up. It's like I am. And what did I say today? There's nothing that's going to stop me. I know where
Right.
I'm going. I know, even though I may not know the way, and people think as who I am, it's like, of course you can't see. No, I can't see my own. What? No,
Yeah.
it's. I'm in the desert sometimes, but it's like I don't know, but I trust that everything and every connection and everything that's going down is exactly where I need to be.
Yeah.
Everything is unfolding and it's divinely guided, so divinely guided. And
100%.
yeah, I just, yeah, the synergy. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm so grateful for you. So grateful. Thank you for
Thank you for
spending
having me.
time today. All
Yeah, it
right.
was my
Until we
pleasure.
meet again, stay to two, three, four, who knows how many times you just may like be a monthly guest. And we're
Hey,
like,
I'm good.
Brian's back. Brian, and we'll bring on lives. Who knows? I did do a podcast where I did lives. So we might
Oh,
just do that.
love that.
Yeah. 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 People like it too. It was a little overwhelming, but we may even do that. All right.
All right.